Well, good morning, Year 12. Here I am again, pestering you to finish coursework. Has anything ever really changed? Not really, but here we go. We're doing part 3. Remember that we're just working on the P3 element. Okay, M1, we've got the delights of that to come. The anticipation of M1 is probably hard to take, but we'll get there soon enough. Let's finish part 3 first of all. And what I would like to say is, or what I would like to make is well, I'd like to commend you actually. I think you're doing a great job in this lockdown and carrying on with your coursework. You're doing what you need to do and you're soldiering on. So, good stuff. Keep that going. There are a couple who haven't, but you're getting there and you can do it. So, let's all work together so that when we come back we can all support each other to get the coursework done, and we're not at different stages. So let's get there. Okay, enough waffle, let's get down to what we're doing. So we've been doing marketing campaigns. A little bit of eye act for you. We don't have to make any judgments, we're just explaining how they measure the impact of their marketing campaign, right? So you don't have to give me pros and cons or what went well and what didn't. You can give me facts and figures, but you don't need to make any judgments. But we're specifically explaining how they would measure and the differences. And part 3 is about the differences. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've looked at a large business. So I give the example of Fright Night at Thorpe Park, and we looked at their online presence, their footfall, their sales. We looked at how this was a campaign aimed at young adults, thrill seekers, and so on. Then I looked at a small local business, and that's where you've just looked at. So any local business, and we looked at, again, in the same sort of thread, we looked at their sales and their trends. We looked at the profit that they would amass, and we've looked at their brand. And if I remember correctly, in terms of sales and trends, well, Oggy One Pasty was all about deliveries, because they were looking to keep the deliveries up during the coronavirus pandemic. They were looking at the sales of pasties. They were looking at maybe likes on Facebook. And in terms of profit, they were looking to keep their head above the water and ensure they could cover their costs. When it comes to brand, they were supporting the NHS. They were creating a feel-good factor around their brand. Maybe, in terms of brand and logo and identity, not so much for the small local business. It's all about relationship with customers, that day-to-day contact that they have, and how they engage with customers more than the brand image perception and how it compares with major other brands and market share. Slightly less businessy and terminology that they would use. It's more simplistic. It's money in, it's money out. So that's how we looked at how they would measure themselves as a small local business. What we're looking at today is the differences. So if we look at this table here, this is you might want to carry out this table as preparation for your part 3 to P3. So what I've just done there is I've put the 3 talking points that we're going to be covering. So I've got me sales and me trends here. I've got obviously profit, and I've got brand and reputation. This could be a writing frame for your final draft. It's up to you. This is a choice that you could make. So when we're looking at Thorpe Park and the differences between Oggy Pasty, then go for the simplistic differences. You don't have to be really, really clever on this one. So in terms of sales and trends, Thorpe Park, they're going to be sort of discussing in their millions, okay? So in terms of the size of their turnover, that's going to be extremely large compared to Oggy Pasty. If we look at Oggy Pasty, well, then we're looking at, on a monthly basis, we're looking at hundreds rather than millions. So that's a straightforward difference. If we look at sales and trends of Thorpe Park, then, you could mention that, it's overseas. Whereas the Oggy Pasty local, well, that one is just going to be in the local vicinity. Another issue in terms of Oggy Pasty, sorry, I keep mentioning the word in terms, repeating myself, but you could talk about, petrol. In terms of measuring their sales, how much petrol are they using? They could link it to their costs, and their costs are likely to be significantly lower. Thorpe Park, when they're looking at measuring their trends, well, very simply, they use turnstiles. So they could just look at the number of people that actually enter the park and footfall. That's far different to Oggy Pasty. They don't want people coming into the shops. They could just look at the number of pasties sold. That would be a difference. So don't overthink this. Just look at how the sales and how they'd measure the sales would be different in its entirety. If we move on to profit, well, Thorpe Park, I'm just going to draw a big pound sign here, because the cost, and I'm talking about costs here, the costs of Thorpe Park's advertising and marketing campaign is absolutely massive. The cost of their campaign would probably be more than 10 Oggy Pasty ones would generate in terms of profit in a lifetime. So the major difference there is the size, the scope, the cost of the campaign. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to make a profit. You could also talk about how Thorpe Park uses TV, the different mediums that they use. That would be far different to Oggy Pasty. Oggy Pasty, it could just be, the use of Facebook. I don't know why I'm writing this, because it's totally, you can't understand it, but there you go. We might help. And Facebook is very, very cheap. So when looking at the two campaigns, the cost factor is probably the biggest element. However, I would say that in all of that, the difference in costs, it could well still just be, a similar percentage of Thorpe Park. It might be 10% of the overall profit is spent on marketing. I hesitate to guess that maybe Oggy Pasty, that what they spend on advertising may also be 10%. But there is a difference in cost. I think the cost for Oggy Pasty is about time, because they might be one or two people working there. The time it takes to take the photos, put them onto Facebook, that's where the cost is. In terms of Thorpe Park, they probably employ a team, a department. They spend tens of thousands of pounds employing people to mastermind their campaign, which then has an impact on their profit. So try and think about the costs, try and think about how or what the marketing campaign has had on their time, their labour, their space, their resources, even equipment that they've had to buy. So Thorpe Park, they've bought, high-tech equipment, whereas Augie Pasty might have just bought a camera or a digital camera. Excuse me. Right, going on to brand then and brand reputation. Well, we're talking here in terms of a global brand and how they've got to create this thrill seeker brand and how the target audience is different. It could be as simple as that. Remember, don't overthink these things. In terms of Augie Pasty, that it's more about customer engagement. It's more about the relationship with the customer. They've got a logo. They still need to be identified and they need to be different from other pasty shops. But it's more about customer service. Word of mouth is a greater benefit to them than the global brand that is Thorpe Park. And Thorpe Park is more about creating identity in a far bigger market where you've got Alton Towers, Legoland, favourite of mine, Peppa Pig World, what a place, Thomas the Tank World, or whatever else there is that they're competing. Chessington is another one. So they've got to spend millions and millions of pounds, and also what they've got to think about is trust, because of that theme park accident at Alton Towers, which is also owned by the same parent company. Okay, so lots of differences there. One thing I would say is, if you want to write about some similarities, go for it. That's also fine. Similarities and differences, but try and make it more so linked to your differences. Okay, so that's where we want to go there, but similarities are fine. Which leads us to the write-up then. 3 sections: differences between large and the small business, and I'd just lay it out in terms of sales, profit, brand and reputation. I'd talk about differences, I'd talk about similarities. I wouldn't make judgments, it's just explaining how they would measure, maybe what they would expect, the expectations from the marketing campaign. You don't need to say that one was better than the other. You could say that one would generate millions whereas one would generate hundreds, but in terms of percentages that may not be better, it may not be worse, but you're just explaining. Okay, I hope all of that made sense. As always, stay safe, and if you've got any issues with this, contact me. Don't go quiet. Stay on the radar and keep in touch. We're doing well. We're progressing. We're all right. You're doing a good job, and you can relax and be content in the fact that we're doing what we can and we're getting through the coursework. We're doing our bit. Okay, have a good week.